Okay, we're back in it, unveiling Lazarus and Mark's Gospel. This is episode 5, Lazarus at the Last Supper. So again, the focus of the series, Lazarus is making cameo appearances in the Gospels. These are more prominent in Mark than in the other synoptic Gospels. And why? Because his friends Peter and Andrew, who are the true source of Mark's Gospel, they want you to find their friend Lazarus there. So big presupposition, we talked about this on the first episode. Lazarus is the beloved disciple. He's the author of the fourth gospel. If you're not in agreement with that, again, you can check out the playlist to that video series. Is going to be included in the description. You just click on the link there. That's the big presupposition today. If you're not on board with that, you're not really going to appreciate this. But here we go. Lazarus at the Last Supper out of Mark 14. What is different about Mark's version of the story, and how does Mark's version point to Lazarus more so than the other synoptic gospel accounts? Here's the text. In the evening, he, Jesus, came with the 12. Now, as they sat and ate, Jesus said, Assuredly, I say to you, one of you who eats with me will betray me. And they began to be sorrowful and to say to him one by one, Is it I? And another said, Is it I? He answered and said to them, It is one of the 12 who dips with me in the dish. The Son of Man indeed goes just as it is written of him, but woe to that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been good for that man if he had never been born. And before I go on to the next slide here, very important, that first sentence, it says, in the evening he came with the 12. None of the gospels say that he only was with the 12 eating at the table. So he may have come in only with the 12, but someone else could have already been there, which could be the beloved disciple. But again, very important what he says in verse 20, when he says to the beloved disciple, it is one of the 12. And we get there from harmonizing the gospels. Obviously, the beloved disciple is not mentioned in Mark. Lazarus isn't mentioned in Mark, but again, through harmonizing, we get that. So again, verse 20, it is one of the 12 who dips with me in the dish. Mark is the only gospel that records Jesus as saying this. So is it an insignificant detail? Is there more behind its inclusion here? So picture the scene. Here's a picture we've all seen here. You got Jesus and a bunch of men around the table. Sometimes the pictures have women at the table. So when we are harmonizing the Last Supper, the beloved disciple leans on Jesus, and Jesus says to him, It is one of the 12. This is very significant. If we take seriously what Jesus is saying there, that means that the person Jesus is telling that to cannot be one of the 12. In other words, Jesus doesn't say to him, It's one of you guys. He doesn't even say, It's one of you 12. No, he said, It is one of the 12. Again, the beloved disciple is not one of the 12. Mark's gospel, again, is the synoptic account which unveils Lazarus to the reader. And as this whole series has been pointing towards, Peter and Andrew want us to connect the dots to find Lazarus and their version of the gospel. We're going to see this in future episodes as well. Tail of the tape. We did this on a different video for a different series before, and since I'm here, I didn't want to make the point of this to try to prove to you that Lazarus is the beloved disciple. But with this scene at the Last Supper, it's so important because so many people reject the idea that Lazarus is the beloved disciple because of the Last Supper. One, they assume it's only the 12 there, and two, they're not paying attention to what Jesus said, that it is one of the 12. But here's another thing. The Apostle John versus Lazarus, let's just think about this. Which man was more likely to lean on Jesus' bosom at a dinner? What kind of temperament, what kind of personality or spirit would someone leaning on Jesus's bosom? Would it be a rugged, vulgar, manly fisherman who was one of the sons of thunder who wanted to call fire down from heaven on the Samaritans? Probably not. Or was it Lazarus, a young, clean cut? We saw before, he's the rich young ruler. He owed his life to Jesus. Jesus had raised him from the dead. And Lazarus, I've mentioned this in other series, other videos, he's probably a little soft having grown up with two sisters, Mary and Martha, right? And one thing people say, oh, well, John could have done it because Jesus changed his heart, the Holy Spirit. No, remember regarding John, the Holy Spirit had not yet come upon the disciples at this point. You cannot say John had changed so much that he went from being a rugged fisherman to a a man willing to lean on another man's bosom at dinner. I mean, it's actually kind of funny if you try to picture. Can you picture a big hairy burly man leaning on Jesus? No, look at that picture right there. That's a picture of Lazarus leaning on Jesus's bosom. And again, I didn't always have this right. I used to believe it was John. I'm not saying I'm better or smarter than anyone, but once you see this, like so many things in the Bible, some of them they just click and you can't unsee it. And you start to look at all the other circumstances, and it doesn't work. John is not the beloved disciple. He did not write the fourth gospel. He is not leaning on Jesus at the Last Supper. And I have gone on a rant. I knew that was going to happen. But anyway, couldn't help myself. But again, any questions or comments? I just look for what we're doing here on this Mark's gospel. Clearly, Peter and Andrew, they want you to see their friend Lazarus in their gospel. The other gospel account in the synoptics, they're kind of shying away from it for whatever reason. Maybe they felt as if Peter's gospel account already did a good enough job. But as always, any questions or comments, let me know. And until next time, contend earnestly for the faith which was once for all delivered to the saints, and God bless.